The cold did not hit me all at once. It seeped in slowly like the truth of what was happening could not reach my mind fast enough. One moment I was standing in the hallway holding a laundry basket, and the next my husband was dragging me by the wrist toward the front door. His grip was tight enough to bruise, but not tight enough to look like anything other than anger if a neighbor happened to see. That was always how he operated. Never enough to get himself in trouble, just enough to break me in private. A second later, I was shoved outside, stumbling onto the icy porch with nothing but a thin sweater over my blouse. The wind sliced straight through it. My breath hitched as he stood in the doorway staring at me like I was something he found stuck to the bottom of his shoe. "A woman who cannot give me a child is not a wife." He said it quietly, almost bored, as if he were commenting on the weather. Then he closed the door. The lock clicked. I froze, staring at the wood grain inches from my face. He had said cruel things before, but something in that moment felt final. As if he had cut the last invisible thread holding our life together, and now expected me to simply blow away with the snow. I knocked once, then again, then harder. Nothing. Lights stayed off. Curtains still. Our neighbors' houses glowed warmly on both sides, but no one came out. This was a nice neighborhood. Nice people did not get involved. The air bit at my cheeks until they burned. My fingers shook as I wrapped my arms around myself and backed away from the door. I did not have my phone, my wallet, or even real shoes, just flats meant for work, and now slick with frost. I started walking because standing still felt like dying. The street was quiet, the kind of quiet that happens only late at night in winter. Streetlights flickered halos of pale gold glowing against falling snow. Every breath crystallized before me. I made it to the bus stop at the end of the street. My body ached. My legs trembled. The world blurred in and out of focus. I sat down on the metal bench and tried to steady my breathing, but the cold wrapped itself around me until even my thoughts moved slowly. An older couple passed by on the sidewalk across the street. They looked at me, hesitated, whispered something to each other, and then hurried along. No one wanted to pick up trouble someone else created. I checked my pockets again, even though I knew they were empty. No fare. No way to get anywhere. No one to call. A slow wave of numbness moved through me. Not the cold this time. Something heavier. A realization. I had nowhere to go. When the tears finally came, they froze on my lashes. I pulled my knees toward my chest and closed my eyes. Maybe if I slept, the cold would not hurt so much. Maybe morning would come and I would figure something out. Or maybe I would not have to figure anything out at all. Time blurred. Snow settled on my shoulders. My thoughts dimmed. Then I heard it. Tires crunching on frozen slush. I forced my eyes open as a black SUV eased to a stop a few yards from me. The headlights cast long shadows across the empty street. For a moment, I thought it was him. Maybe he had changed his mind. Maybe he wanted to hurt me a little more before the night ended. But the door opened and another man stepped out. Tall, dark coat, careful movements. Not aggressive, not curious. Just concerned. He kept his distance as he approached. "Are you all right?" The words floated toward me wrapped in warmth I was not ready to trust. My lips trembled when I tried to answer. Nothing came out. He knelt slightly to meet my eyes. "May I help you?" Still nothing. Then he noticed my shaking hands and the thin sweater clinging to my arms. He shrugged off his coat with a quiet motion and draped it over my shoulders. Not touching my skin. Not coming too close. The warmth was instant and almost painful. I managed to whisper the only truth I could form. "I am cold." He nodded gently as if that was all he needed to know. "There is a diner open down the road. It is warm. Come with me." 3 simple words. Not demanding. Not assuming. An invitation. I hesitated because part of me still wondered if kindness was just another trap. But the wind hit my face again, and the decision was made for me. I stood on shaky legs and let him guide me toward the SUV. Not touching, just walking beside me like someone who understood what fear looked like. I ate soup at the diner, though my hands shook too much to hold the spoon steady. The warmth made me dizzy. My vision swam. The last thing I remembered was the man speaking to a waitress, his voice soft and calm. Then everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, I was in a strange room, warm light glowing softly. A blanket tucked around me. A woman with kind eyes, maybe a nanny standing nearby. I did not know if I had just been saved, or if I had stepped unknowingly into something worse. When morning light touched my eyelids, it was soft and warm. The kind of light that belonged to a home, not the bitter street where I had last been conscious. For a few seconds, I lay still staring at the ceiling, trying to understand where I was and why my body no longer felt frozen from the inside out. The blanket draped over me smelled faintly of lavender and detergent. A guest room, clean, quiet, safe in a way that felt unfamiliar and therefore suspicious. I sat up slowly, dizzy but no longer shaking. A closed door stood across from me, and beside it a small nightstand held a glass of water and a folded towel. Someone had thought ahead, prepared, made space for me without asking anything in return. That confused me more than anything else. Then a soft knock on the door startled me. It opened only halfway. The woman who entered was in her 50s, tidy gray hair pulled back into a low bun, an apron tied around her waist. Not a nurse, more like a house manager or nanny. She gave a gentle smile when she saw me awake. "Good morning. I am Maria. You fainted last night and Adrian asked me to keep an eye on you." Adrian. The name settled in slowly like warmth returning to numb fingers. The man from the diner. She set a tray at the foot of the bed. Toast fruit tea. Simple, but the sight of it made my throat tighten. I could barely meet her eyes. "Thank you. Do you know where my things are?" She shook her head kindly. "You did not have anything with you, dear." I looked down at my hands. Empty. Hollow. Of course. After she left, I hesitated before walking into the hallway. The house was bright, but not in a cold, expensive way. Light poured in from tall windows and softened the edges of everything it touched. Modern, yes, but lived in. A faint hum of voices drifted from downstairs. I followed it and found myself at the edge of a large kitchen. 3 children sat at a long oak table, a girl around 10 with serious eyes, a boy, maybe 8, with tousled hair staring at his cereal like it had offended him, and a small boy of about 4 swinging his legs as he giggled at something on the tablet propped in front of him. Then the man from last night turned from the counter holding a mug of coffee. He froze when he saw me. Not startled, just aware. Present in a way that made my heartbeat stumble. He set down the mug and approached slowly, hands at his sides, palms visible. Boundaries. Respect. He knew the unspoken language of someone who had been hurt. "You are awake." His voice was warm but steady. No questions. No assumptions. No, "you owe me anything." I stood near the doorway, unsure if I was allowed farther. "Thank you for helping me. I will leave soon. I just need to find somewhere that can take someone without identification." His brow tightened just slightly, not with judgment, but with concern. "You do not have to rush. You can leave whenever you choose. But before you decide, I want to ask you 2 things. Only 2. I nodded carefully. He lifted 2 fingers. "First, are you safe going back to where you came from?" The answer rose in my throat like a scream. "No." I barely managed to shake my head. "Second, do you want to leave right now?" I swallowed. Looked at the floor. My voice came out barely more than a whisper. "I do not know." He nodded once. "That is enough. No pressure, no expectations, no obligations. Just choices you can make when you feel steady." He stepped aside so I could enter the kitchen if I wanted. The oldest child watched me silently, the middle one narrowed his eyes with suspicion, and the youngest smiled with the unfiltered trust of someone too young to know fear. "This is Claire, Liam, and Noah," he said. "Kids, this is our guest." They did not greet me, but they did not turn away. That alone felt like grace. I stayed by the wall, hugging myself. "I cannot stay long. I do not want to be a burden." His head shook gently. "You are not a burden. People in pain are not burdens." His words hit deeper than I expected. I blinked quickly to push away the sudden sting in my eyes. Maria reappeared with a set of folded clothes for me. Something warm, simple, borrowed, but clean. When she handed them to me, she said quietly, "You are safe here for as long as you need." Safe. The word felt foreign on my tongue. I thanked her and escaped to the guest room to change, needing a moment where no one could watch the fragile parts of me shaking loose. When I returned, breakfast had ended and the kids had scattered. Adrian stood at the kitchen island reading something on his phone. When he looked up, I saw kindness, but also caution. He was not a man swept up in savior fantasies. He was a man carefully measuring the situation and its impact on 3 children who depended on him, which made me trust him more than any grand gesture ever could. "If you prefer, I can drive you to a local shelter," he said. "They can help you get documents and a place to stay." I nodded. That sounded safe, logical, controlled. But then he continued, "However, they may not have open beds tonight, and it is freezing outside. You are welcome to stay one more night, only if you choose." Something in his tone made it clear there was no hidden motive, no subtle push. He was offering shelter, not himself. I took a slow breath and let it out. "One night." He nodded. Then Maria showed me the house layout, the security system where the phone was if I needed to call anyone. Except I had no one to call. Later, while standing near the living room window, I watched snow drift quietly over the backyard. The house behind me hummed with life. Children bickering upstairs. Maria humming as she rinsed dishes. Adrian speaking softly on the phone about a school pickup schedule. The ordinary rhythm of a family. Something I had once wanted and had been denied so brutally that I no longer trusted my own desire for it. For the rest of the day, I stayed silent and out of the way, unsure how to exist in a home where no one yelled, no one threatened, no one demanded. And yet, for the first time in years, I did not flinch at every sound. That night, lying beneath a clean blanket, listening to the faint thump of footsteps from upstairs, I realized something unsettling. Safety did not feel like safety. It felt like a story I was not allowed to be in, a life that was not mine, an illusion that might shatter if I breathed too deeply. I closed my eyes. Safe does not feel real, and sometimes safety feels scarier than danger. I woke the next morning to the quiet murmur of a home already awake. Distant footsteps padded across hardwood floors. Cabinet doors opened and closed. A low hum of conversation drifted through the hallway. For a moment, before memory returned, I let myself pretend those sounds belonged to a life that had always included me. But the truth reminded me with a sharp pulse in my chest. I sat up slowly and winced as a dull ache rippled through my ribs. Bruises. They were fading, but the soreness lingered like an echo of his hands. I touched the tender skin beneath my shirt and pulled my hand away quickly, as if refusing to acknowledge it would make it less real. After dressing in the clean clothes Maria had left, I stepped quietly into the hallway. The scent of coffee floated toward me, rich and warm. I followed it into the kitchen. Adrian sat at the island reading something on his tablet glasses low on his nose, a mug near his hand. When he noticed me, he set the tablet aside. "Morning." His voice was quiet but steady. Not loud, not sharp, not demanding. Just there, present. I nodded, unable to fully meet his eyes. Maria approached with a plate of eggs and toast. "You should eat," she said softly. "You need strength." I opened my mouth to refuse out of habit, but my stomach tightened with a hunger I had ignored for too long. "Thank you," I whispered. I took a seat at the far end of the island. Adrian did not move closer. He simply resumed reading, giving me space to exist. That small grace nearly unraveled me. Halfway through breakfast, my hands began to tremble around the fork. Memories came back uninvited, the way they always did when my body sensed unfamiliar safety. The shouting, the insults, the slam of a door, the sickening thud of my body hitting the floor. The smallest sound in the kitchen made me flinch. Adrian noticed. He put down his tablet and leaned back slightly, not toward me, but away, creating more space. "You do not owe me explanations," he said, "but you also do not have to hold everything alone." The words were gentle but firm, and something inside me cracked open. I swallowed hard. "I am not used to people speaking softly," I admitted. He nodded once as though he had already understood that without needing to hear it. Would you like to sit outside for some air? I hesitated, then nodded. The deck behind the house overlooked a quiet yard, blanketed with thin snow. He opened the sliding door and stepped out first, letting me choose whether to follow. I did. The cold bit at my cheeks, but it felt clean, almost grounding. For several minutes we stood in silence, no probing questions, no expectation. The kind of silence that felt more like an invitation than pressure. Then the words came, not by choice, but by necessity, as if they had been waiting for a moment quiet enough to escape. He pushed me once, I said softly. It was the first time. My voice shook. I thought maybe I deserved it. Maybe I had said something wrong, but it got worse. It always gets worse. The bruises, the insults, the way he demanded I apologize for things I did not do, the way he told me a woman who cannot give a man a child is worthless. The moment I spoke those words aloud, my throat tightened so painfully I had to stop. Adrian did not interrupt. He let me breathe. Let me find my voice again on my own. I stared down at my hands, fingers knotted together. I got pregnant once. 2 months. I did not mean for my voice to crack, but it did. He lost his temper one night. He shoved me so hard I hit the wall. I felt something tear inside. I lost the baby on the bathroom floor. I had not spoken that sentence in years. Not to another human being. Not even fully to myself. Adrian exhaled a long breath that did not feel like pity, but like someone absorbing the gravity of what I said, so I did not have to carry all of it alone. Did he take you to the hospital? No. My laugh was brittle. He said it was my fault. He locked the bathroom door so the neighbors would not hear me crying. I think I died that night. Not physically. Just everything I thought I was. The cold air blurred as my eyes filled. I blinked fast. Do not cry, he said quietly. Not because you should not, but because you do not need to apologize for surviving. I looked at him then. Really looked. His face held no judgment, no shock, no discomfort. Only a steady sadness that matched the heaviness inside me. Before I could respond, a chime sounded from inside the house. Adrian pulled out his phone, glanced at the screen, and frowned. That video from last night. It is circulating. My breath caught. Video. What video? The neighbor's Ring camera, he explained. The footage of you being pushed out the door. Someone posted it to a local gossip page. My heart dropped. He held the screen toward me. There I was, standing on the porch in the freezing cold, barefoot shaking while Mark shoved me through the doorway and threw my coat after me like garbage. The comments were knives. Maybe she deserved it. Infertile women can get dramatic. Look at her. She probably cheated. The room around me spun. I gripped the railing. Someone sent me this too, Adrian added, lowering his voice as if the air itself might shatter me. He turned the screen again. A single line from a blocked number. You think you can hide? You belong to me. My knees weakened. My chest tightened painfully. I could barely whisper. He knows I am alive. Adrian stepped closer, but still not touching, letting me choose the distance. You are not alone anymore. His voice was steady, almost anchoring. I wish I believed that. But fear had always owned the first claim on me, and right now it rose again like a familiar shadow wrapping around my throat. I woke the next morning to the vibration of a phone that was not mine. A soft buzz on the nightstand beside the guest bed, persistent enough to pull me from a restless sleep. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then the ceiling came into focus, the unfamiliar softness of the blankets, the faint smell of lavender detergent. Safety, or something close to it. But the buzzing continued and something in my chest tightened with the familiar dread that came with any unexpected sound. I sat up slowly and peeked at the hallway. Voices drifted from downstairs low and tense. I followed the sound. Adrian was in the kitchen with Maria the nanny, both of them looking at a laptop screen as if it had delivered a death sentence. He noticed me and quickly closed the laptop, but not fast enough. I saw it. My face. Frozen on the screen. The Ring camera video. Me being pushed from the house, my coat hitting the ground beside me. My bare feet on the porch. My arms wrapped around myself. That moment of humiliation had been uploaded from some neighbor's camera and blasted across social media while I slept. I felt the floor tilt under me. Adrian's voice softened. Do not look at the comments. Too late. The few I saw had already sliced through me. She must have done something to deserve it. Infertile wife gets kicked out. Drama queen. Look how she plays victim. I felt exposed in a way I had never imagined. Mark had always controlled me in private. Now, strangers were invited to judge me publicly. For a moment, I could not breathe. My chest tightened, my throat burned, my body felt weightless and heavy all at once. I leaned against the counter to steady myself. I need water, I whispered, though no amount could wash this feeling out. Without a word, Maria handed me a glass. Her hand lingered on mine a moment longer, a gesture so gentle it nearly undid me. Then the front doorbell rang. Once. Twice. Sharp, urgent. Adrian's expression changed instantly. He moved toward the foyer and motioned for me to stay in the kitchen, but the moment he opened the door, I heard them. Cameras clicking, reporters calling his name, a woman's voice slicing through the cold morning air. Mr. Hale is the woman from the video staying in your home. Are you in a relationship with her? Is she the reason your late wife's family demanded an internal investigation last year? Adrian shut the door with more force than elegance. His jaw clenched. He looked down the hall toward me, frustration and apology battling in his eyes. They found out you were here. How? My voice barely rose above a whisper. He returned to the kitchen and rubbed his forehead. Someone must have recognized you from last night, or from the neighbor's footage. Paparazzi move fast when there is a chance to twist something. Twisting. That was what scared me most. Not just the exposure, but the rewriting of my life into a narrative I had no control over. I felt like I was disappearing again, being erased and remade into whatever version of me suited their headlines. He must have seen the panic forming behind my eyes because he lowered his voice. I can drive you somewhere safe, maybe a shelter, or a hotel under my assistant's name. You do not owe me anything. That sentence hit me like a spark to dry leaves. No man had ever offered me safety without demanding something in return. I swallowed hard and shook my head. I am sorry. I did not mean for my presence to cause trouble for your family. His face softened, but before he could respond, footsteps thundered from upstairs. The kids! Liam appeared first, the oldest around 11, wide-eyed and irritated already. Why are reporters on the lawn? Did we do something? Sophie followed, hair tangled from sleep, hugging a stuffed unicorn. Max, the youngest, clung to her shirt. They all stared at me, confused, curious, a little scared. Heat rushed to my cheeks. I felt like an intruder in the very place that had sheltered me. I did not want their lives touched by my chaos. Adrian stepped beside them and placed a steadying hand on Liam's shoulder. Everything is fine, just noise, nothing else. But the kids kept staring at me. Not with blame, just with too many questions I did not have the strength to answer. I excused myself and walked toward the laundry room to breathe. As I leaned against the wall, my old phone buzzed in my pocket. A number I did not recognize. A text. Meet me. Alone. Tonight. Bring what you took. Or everyone sees what you truly are. My blood ran cold. What I took. He meant freedom. He meant my absence. He meant my voice. Or maybe he meant something worse. And everyone sees what you truly are. The threat clung to me like smoke. I closed my eyes and pressed a hand to my chest. I had barely escaped with my life, and now the world was pulling me back toward him. I wanted to delete the message to pretend it did not exist, to beg whatever fragile piece I had to stay unshattered. But fear does not disappear when ignored. It festers. It grows teeth. When I returned to the kitchen, Adrian was on the phone with someone from security. His voice was calm, but forceful the way sunlight cuts through a storm. He glanced at me with a silent question. Are you all right? I nodded too quickly. A lie, thin as paper. The truth was buzzing under my skin like electricity. The truth was that my past was no longer behind me. It was beside me, stepping into my new life, daring me to think I had escaped. And then another message came, this one with a photo. A zoomed-in shot of me walking out of Adrian's SUV the night he found me, a circle drawn around my face. The caption read, "You cannot hide in someone else's house." My breath hitched. I sank into a chair. It felt like the world was tightening around me brick by brick, story by story, until there was no room left to breathe. Adrian reached across the counter, not touching me but anchoring the space between us. "Whatever is happening," he said, "we will handle it." His voice was steady, strong, certain. But certainty is a luxury trauma does not allow. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust that safety was something I could step into without it vanishing beneath my feet. But as I stared at the phone, at the message, at the threat disguised as a whisper, only one thought pulsed in my mind. The internet had chosen its version of my story, and now Mark wanted to finish his. The house was quieter after the reporters left, but the quiet did not feel like peace. It felt like the moment after a storm, when branches still drip, when air still trembles, when danger does not disappear, but simply waits. I stayed near the hallway, unsure whether to make myself useful or invisible. Years of survival had trained me to take up as little space as possible. But in this house, space was abundant. Too abundant. Rooms opened into each other like gentle invitations, and every window held a slice of a life I did not know how to belong to. Adrian insisted I rest, but rest felt like a luxury I had no right to. So instead, I drifted to the kitchen and began washing the dishes stacked beside the sink. Maria had been making breakfast when everything fell apart earlier. Pancakes, half-cooked bowls of flour still open, berries scattered on the counter. I cleaned because my hands needed something to do, because movement kept fear from hardening, because I could not bear being watched while feeling like a burden. But as I scrubbed the last plate, I felt eyes on me. Soft, hesitant ones. I turned. Sophie, the middle child, stood in the doorway wearing a faded lavender sweater and mismatched socks. Her dark hair framed her round cheeks, and she hugged a handmade paper crown to her chest as if it were treasure. She did not speak, only investigated me with an intensity I was not used to receiving from a child. I dried my hands and knelt so I would not tower over her. "Do you need something?" She shook her head, then stepped closer. Her voice was a whisper. "Are you staying here now?" The question slid through me like warm wind. I froze because I did not know the answer. "I am just here for a little while," I said. Her lips pressed together. "That is what everyone says before they leave." Her words were not sharp. They were simply honest, painfully honest. She turned and walked away quietly, leaving me standing in a kitchen where warmth curled around me like steam from a forgotten pot. Later that afternoon, Liam appeared instead, the oldest, serious, sharp, watching me the same way one watches swaying tree branches for signs of an incoming storm. I was folding towels in the living room when he spoke. "Dad said you went through something bad." His voice had none of the softness Sophie carried. It was blunt, assessing, protective, but then his chin lifted slightly, and for a moment he looked older than he should have to be. "Dad is trying to help you. He always helps people. He does not always get helped back." I set the towel down and studied the boy standing in front of me. He was not angry. He was afraid of what my presence might mean, of what change might bring, of losing someone again. "I do not want anything from your father," I said gently. His brows furrowed. "Then what are you doing here?" The simplest truth came out. Breathing. Something like understanding flickered behind his eyes, but he left without another word. I told myself the children owed me nothing, yet something about them had already begun stitching itself into the quieter corners of my heart. By evening, the house felt fuller. Laughter trickled from the den. The smell of garlic and onion drifted from the kitchen. Adrian was cooking dinner himself. The sight startled me. CEOs in my imagination never held spatulas. But he stood at the stove, sleeves rolled up, tie, gone hair, a little messy from the day's chaos. When he noticed me hovering in the doorway, he lifted a brow. Hungry. I stepped inside. "I can help?" "You have done more than enough today," he said, but handed me a cutting board anyway. "Chop these." He did not supervise. He did not correct me. He trusted me with small tasks the way normal people do. Trust. I had forgotten the shape of that word. We cooked in silence for a while, but it was not awkward. It was easy, soft, real, until my hand trembled as I passed him a bowl, a slight tremor, one only someone paying attention would notice. He turned off the heat immediately. "You okay?" I nodded too quickly. "Just tired." He did not accept the lie. "You do not have to pretend here." His voice was low, steady, untouched by pity. For a moment, I forgot how to inhale. That night, dinner smelled like rosemary and lemon. The children sat around the table arguing about who got the last biscuit. I ate slowly, quietly, afraid the simple act of chewing openly might feel too indulgent. But the food warmed me in ways that had nothing to do with temperature. After dinner, I helped Sophie with her homework. She wrote slowly, pressing her pencil so hard the lead snapped. I sharpened it for her and slid it back. She glanced at me once shyly, the ghost of a smile flickering. Trust bending the first millimeter. Later, I read Max a bedtime story. He curled into my side with the innocent acceptance only very young children have. When he fell asleep, his small fingers still gripped a piece of my sweater. Something in me cracked softly. Not painfully. More like a door opening. A door I had bolted long ago. When I walked past the den on my way back to the guest room, I noticed something taped to the wall near the children's art corner. A new drawing. A woman standing beside 3 children, colored in with markers. The woman had brown hair and a faint smile. I recognized myself immediately. I pressed my fingertips to the paper. My heartbeat felt strange, full, unsteady, alive. That night, lying in the soft bed with the hallway light shining beneath the door, I felt something I had not felt in years. Not safety exactly, not yet, but the beginning of it, the suggestion of it, the possibility. I thought I had been brought into this house to recover, to hide. But as I drifted toward sleep, I finally understood something deeper. This house did not feel like shelter. It felt like breathing. The first sign that something was wrong came early in the morning before sunlight touched the frost on the windows. I had just finished folding the last of the laundry when I noticed a draft slipping through the hallway. Not cold enough to be alarming, just strange enough to make me pause. The house was usually sealed tight, warm in every corner, but now a faint chill lingered, almost like someone had opened a door and forgotten to close it. I walked toward the entryway and stopped. The front door was locked. All the windows were shut, nothing out of place. Still, the air felt disturbed like a held breath in a room that had not yet exhaled. I tried to shake it off. Trauma invents ghosts even when life does not. But when I stepped outside onto the porch to grab the package delivery, that was when I saw it. Footprints, one set, large deep in the frost, and then leading from the driveway toward the trees. My breath thinned. These were not from Adrian, not from the children, not from any delivery person. These prints circled the porch, then stopped beneath the living room window. My heart squeezed until it felt like bruised fruit. Someone had stood there long enough for the frost to melt beneath their weight, then refroze in small ripples. Someone had watched. Someone had been inches from where the kids slept. I backed away slowly, keeping the house in my peripheral vision, as if the glass might shatter at any moment. When I stepped inside, Adrian was already in the hallway, freshly showered, adjusting his watch as he prepared to leave for a meeting. He was mid-sentence talking about a quarterly report when he saw my face. He stopped. "What happened?" I pointed at the door, unable to form the words. He stepped outside, followed the prints, and crouched beside them. His posture changed. Shoulders tightening, jaw set, not in fear, in anger. "Someone was here," I whispered. He nodded once, then stood and walked back inside with a calm that only came from being quietly furious. "I am calling security." Within minutes, 2 men from his private security team arrived. One checked the grounds, the other pulled camera footage from the night. I stood behind them, arms wrapped around myself, watching the screen as it played hours of darkness in muted, grainy movement. Then, at 2:31 in the morning, a shape emerged from the shadows. A man, hooded, tall, walking slowly toward the porch. He stayed standing at the window for nearly a full minute. Even through the low resolution, I recognized him. Or maybe my body recognized him before my mind did. The way he leaned, the way he lifted his chin, the way he shifted his weight from one foot to the other as if mocking the very ground beneath him. Mark, my husband, my past, my mistake in human form. The room spun, the walls closing in like fists. I had not seen him since the night he threw me out, but fear remembers. Fear keeps a map of familiar monsters. My knees nearly buckled. Adrian saw it and stepped closer, careful not to touch me. Elena, I shook my head, my voice a rasp. He found me. This sentence cracked something inside me that I had been holding together with thread. Adrian turned to his security team. I want 24-hour perimeter monitoring, and notify the sheriff. His tone had steel I had never heard before. When the team left, he finally looked at me, eyes steady. You are not dealing with this alone. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to let the promise root in my chest. But another message pinged on my phone before I could speak. Unknown number. A video file. No caption. Just a timestamp from years ago. I clicked it, and immediately wished I had not. The video showed me younger, thinner, with a bruise on my cheek I used to cover with makeup. Mark's voice thundered off camera. Then the camera shook violently, as if someone had thrown it against a wall. A younger version of me flinched in the corner of the frame. He recorded this. He kept this. My stomach curled into itself. Adrian reached for the phone, but pulled his hand back halfway, waiting for permission. I gave it to him. He watched silently, jaw-flexing eyes darkening with something too deep to be called anger. When the video ended, he lifted his gaze to mine. This is evidence. We report it. He did not whisper, did not soften his tone to be comforting. He was calm, grounded, certain. The way someone speaks when they know panic is a contagious thing. Before I could respond, another message came through. This time text. I see the life you are pretending to have. We are not done. My hands trembled so violently I dropped the phone. Adrian picked it up gently and placed it on the counter. Do not respond to him. I nodded even as my pulse roared in my ears. I should not be here, I whispered. The kids, you. I am putting everyone in danger. He shook his head. He put you in danger, not the other way around. That difference matters. But fear does not care about logic. Fear builds its own courtroom, and in mine, I always lost. I wanted to disappear again, to run, to empty myself until I was nothing but footsteps too faint to follow. But then Sophie appeared in the doorway, still in pajamas, rubbing her eyes. She looked at me first, not at Adrian, not at the security feed still frozen on screen. At me, like she sensed the panic leaking from my spine. Are you okay? I forced a smile that felt too tight, too fragile. Yes, sweetie, just tired. Sophie studied me, then stepped forward and wrapped her arms around my waist. A small hug, quick, real, enough to anchor me, enough to break me. When she let go, Adrian spoke quietly. Elena, listen to me. We are going to handle this. We, not you. Not alone. Something in his tone steadied the shaking inside me even as fear lingered like smoke after a fire. But I still felt that shadow, still felt those footprints, still felt the familiar dread sinking into my bones. Mark had whispered my name without ever speaking. He had found me, and he had no intention of letting me go. Fear does not shout. It whispers. It whispers in the quietest corners of your mind until suddenly it becomes the only voice you hear. That was what happened to me in the hours after Mark's footprints were found outside the house. I moved through the day like someone underwater hearing only muffled echoes. The children's laughter sounded distant. The warmth of the kitchen felt unreachable. Even Adrian's presence, steady and grounding, felt like it belonged to a world I was no longer standing in. Every time I blinked, I saw that grainy video. Me younger, terrified, trapped. Every time I breathed, I tasted the metallic tang of dread. I told myself I was safe here. I repeated it silently until the words dried into something hollow. But that night, fear finally took the wheel. It started with a message. No threats this time. No violence. No demands. Just one sentence. Come meet me, and this ends. Bring what you owe me. My stomach lurched. What I owed him was my silence, my obedience, my life. But fear twists reason. It makes you believe the past is still stronger than the present. I stared at the phone until my vision blurred. Adrian had gone upstairs to read to Max. I could hear the faint murmur of his voice drifting through the hallway ceiling, soft and steady. The sound of a father who knew how to make monsters small for children who were afraid of the dark. I envied that. I envied his certainty, his sense of safety, his faith in systems and justice, a faith I did not have. Not anymore. I walked quietly to the kitchen, wrote a note with trembling hands. Thank you for everything. I am sorry. I placed it beside the teapot, the one I knew he reached for every morning. Then I slipped out the back door, closing it gently so the latch would not click. The cold hit me instantly, slicing through my sweater like thin blades of ice. But I barely felt it. My body was running on instinct. The same instinct that once kept me alive in a house that never allowed me to breathe. I reached the driveway and stopped. Adrian's SUV sat parked beneath the security lights. For a moment, the sight of it almost broke me. The memory of him draping his coat over my shoulders. The memory of him saying, "Come with me." The memory of the first warmth I had felt in years. But warmth and love do not always win against fear. Sometimes fear is louder. I walked past the SUV and toward the street, pulling the hood of my sweater tighter. The snow crunched beneath my shoes. Streetlights glowed against the frosty air, and the wind pushed against my steps like a warning I did not heed. I kept walking, refusing to look back. Halfway down the block, I texted the number. "I am on my way." The reply came instantly. "Good. Do not make me come get you." My breath hitched. I kept going. I did not hear the door open behind me. I did not see the porch light shift. But 15 minutes later, as I crossed into the old industrial district, a pair of headlights swept across my back. I froze. The engine slowed. My pulse thrashed. He found me already. But when the vehicle pulled up beside me, the window lowered, and I saw him. Adrian. His face was carved in something sharper than anger. Something closer to fear. "Elena, get in the car." His voice was not raised. It was precise and controlled, the kind of tone a man uses when he is trying not to break. I stepped back. "You should not be here, and you should not be walking alone to meet a man who hurt you. That is exactly why I am here." I shook my head. "If I handle this, he will stop." "You think dealing with men like him makes them stop? You think giving up pieces of yourself is enough?" His voice softened. "It is never enough." I turned away, ashamed, humiliated, terrified. "I cannot put your children in danger. I cannot put you in danger. You are not deciding that alone." I kept walking. Stupid, desperate, driven by panic that had drowned every rational thought I once possessed. Adrian followed slowly in the car, matching my pace headlights, illuminating my path like a spotlight on every bad choice I was making. "Elena, please." He never said please. Not once since I had known him. That word alone nearly broke the fear's grip, but I had already crossed too far. The meeting spot was half a mile ahead near an abandoned bus terminal. I needed to end this. For them, for him, for me. Maybe for all the wrong reasons, but it felt right in my frantic mind. Adrian finally stopped, the car opened the door and stepped out. Snow clung to his hair. Cold flushed his cheeks. He walked after me, catching my wrist gently, not forcefully. The touch was warm, too warm. I pulled my hand back as if burned. He frowned at my reaction but stayed where he was. "Look at me." I did not, because if I looked, the fear would crack, and if it cracked, I would break. But then he spoke again quietly. "I know you think running toward him is protecting us, but you are only protecting your memories of being powerless. You are not that woman anymore." My chest shuddered. My breath hitched. A sound escaped me that was not quite a sob, not quite a scream, something in between. And that was when another pair of headlights appeared in the distance. Fast, wrong angle, wrong timing. Both of us turned toward it. Adrian whispered my name, Elena, and I realized with nauseating clarity, those were not his headlights, not the man behind me, but the man I was running toward. Mark had arrived. The car barreled toward us through the swirling snow, its headlights slicing the dark like twin blades, and for a moment, everything inside me froze. Not from the cold, but from the awful recognition settling like a stone in my chest. The vehicle slowed only when it was a few feet away, tires skidding slightly on the icy road before coming to a stop across from where Adrian and I stood. The engine idled with an uneven growl. Then the driver's door opened. Mark stepped out. His silhouette was unmistakable, even through the flurries. The straight shoulders, the rigid posture, the confidence of a man convinced he still owned the world around him. He looked almost exactly the same as the day he threw me out. There was something cruel about that. How someone could ruin another person's life and remain untouched by time. His eyes landed on me first, sliding past Adrian as if he were a temporary inconvenience, rather than the man who had pulled me back from a life of fear. "There you are," he said, smirking like we were old friends meeting by chance. "You took long enough." My stomach twisted. Behind me, Adrian shifted slightly, stepping half a pace closer, not blocking me, but close enough that he could intervene if needed. Mark's gaze flicked to him, then amused. "So this is the hero," he said. "The man who thinks he can fix someone like you." The cold dug deeper into my skin. Adrian did not rise to the bait. His voice was calm, flat. "You were told to stay away from her." Mark laughed, a short, sharp sound that bounced off the metal of the abandoned bus terminal behind us. "I don't take orders from strangers," he said, "especially ones who pick up trash off the sidewalk and try to polish it." Shame lanced through me, but it flickered out as quickly as it came. Adrian's presence steadied me, a quiet anchor in the wind. He did not move, did not react, but something in the air around him shifted. Mark reached into his coat pocket. I flinched, stepping back until my heel nearly slipped on a patch of ice, but he only pulled out a phone. He waved it casually. "This," he said, "is why you're here." The phone screen lit up, showing the thumbnail of a video. My video. The one he had used to threaten me. Me, years ago, crumpled on the bathroom floor, bleeding, dazed, broken. A version of myself that still haunted me. I swallowed hard. Snowflakes clung to my eyelashes. "Delete it," I said, my voice barely audible over the wind. "And what will you give me?" Mark asked. "You ran away. You humiliated me. You owe me for that." "She owes you nothing," Adrian said, his tone firm now. Mark rolled his eyes, irritated by his calm. "Stay out of this. I will not." Mark scoffed. "Of course not. Men like you never do. You see a woman hurting and immediately try to swoop in like some savior, but you don't know her." His gaze sharpened. "Cruel. You don't know what she's capable of." He stepped toward us. Adrian stepped forward, too. Snow crunched under their feet. "You made her this way," Adrian said quietly. "Your violence, your control, your lies. You do not get to define her anymore." Mark's face twitched, the first real crack in his confidence. "You think you know something," he snapped. "You think because she cried on your shoulder for a week you understand anything." My breath hitched. He continued louder now. "She is unstable, weak. She could not even carry a child. She ruined our marriage, and she will ruin you too." Something inside me fractured at those words, not from pain, but from a sudden burst of clarity. I had run from him for so long that I had forgotten what my voice sounded like when I used it against him. "Enough," I said sharply. Mark blinked at me, startled. Adrian glanced at me too, but with something like pride warming his eyes. "You don't get to talk about me like I'm not standing here," I said, stepping forward despite my shaking legs. "You don't get to decide my worth anymore." Mark's smirk returned, laced with cold mockery. "Look at you," he said, "playing brave because someone showed you a little kindness." He lifted the phone. "Without this, you're nothing," but he never got the chance to play the video. A second pair of headlights appeared, sweeping across the snow from the opposite direction. Then another, and another. 3 police cruisers pulled into the lot doors, opening in near-perfect unison. The officer stepped out quickly, not aggressively, but with clear purpose. Adrian exhaled once. Quiet relief. He had called them before coming after me. Of course he had. Mark stiffened. "What is this illegal consequence?" Adrian said. The officers approached. "Sir," one of them said to Mark, "we need you to step away from her." Mark scoffed. "She came here voluntarily." "We have reason to believe you have been extorting and threatening her." The officer extended a hand. "Your phone. Now." Mark hesitated. "Just a second. Long enough to confirm everything." I glanced at his pocket. If he resisted, I knew what he was capable of. I braced myself, but then he laughed again, bitter this time. "Fine," he said, tossing the phone lightly. "Take it, there's nothing on it." But there was. The officer unlocked it with ease after asking Mark for the passcode. He did not resist. He truly believed he had covered his tracks. He had not. The screen lit up with message threads, video files, screenshots, drafts he had never sent. More threats, more manipulation, more evidence than anyone expected. The officers exchanged glances. "Sir, turn around. Hands behind your back." Mark's face twisted. "You can't do this. She's my wife." "Legally separated," I said softly, "and not your property." Snow fell harder as the cuffs clicked. Mark turned his head toward me. "This isn't over," he hissed. "It is," Adrian said before I could speak. "You just don't know it yet." The officers led Mark to the cruiser. The taillights glowed red against the snow. I stood shaking in the wind. Not from cold, not from fear, but from the surreal relief that washed through me like warm water spreading through frozen limbs. Adrian stepped closer, his voice low. "Elena." I looked up, breath unsteady, chest tight. "You came after me," I whispered. "Of course I did, even after I left, especially after you left." I exhaled a trembling laugh, the kind that comes right after almost crying. He brushed a snowflake from my cheek, a gesture so small and simple it nearly undid me, but before he could say another word, his phone buzzed sharply. He glanced at the screen. His expression changed. Not anger, not confusion. Something heavier. "It is an email," he said quietly, "from an unknown sender." I frowned. "What does it say?" He turned the screen. My stomach dropped. There was a single image attached. Me, handing Mark the envelope. Caption: "She is lying to you." The snowstorm felt suddenly colder. The night felt suddenly sharper. The danger was not over. It had simply changed shape. The drive back to the house was silent. Not the comfortable kind we had shared before, but a tight, brittle quiet that felt like standing on a frozen lake, waiting for the ice to split. I sat in the passenger seat with my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles ached. Outside the windows, the world was nothing but white blur and shadow. Inside the car, everything felt too sharp, too bright, too fragile. When we pulled into the driveway, the children were waiting at the window. I could see their faces pressed to the glass fog blooming around their breath, little silhouettes glowing against the warm yellow light inside the house. They looked hopeful, relieved, safe, and I felt like I did not deserve to enter that doorway. Adrian parked the car but didn't reach for the keys. He kept his hands still on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead as if searching for the right words among the falling snow. Finally, he spoke. "Elena," he said quietly, "I need to ask you something." My heart clenched. "I know," I whispered. He turned to me, then his expression unreadable, not angry, not cold, but deeply uncertain. "Why were you handing him an envelope?" I swallowed hard. It wasn't what it looked like. "I want to believe that," he said. "I really do." The sting in those words made something inside me crumble. "You think I went to help him?" I said. "Or pay him? Or hide something?" I don't think that he said too quickly, then hesitated. But the video makes it easy for others to think so. There it was, the divide, the crack running between us. "I didn't give him money," I said, "I swear." Then what was it he asked? His voice wasn't raised, but the question cut deeper because of how gentle it was. I opened my mouth, then shut it again. Shame rose in my throat, thick and choking, because I knew how it would sound, because fear had driven my choices, and fear rarely produced explanations that made sense to anyone but the person drowning in it. I wrote a letter, I said finally. A stupid letter. I told him to leave me alone. I told him I wasn't afraid of him anymore. Adrian's brows drew together. And you thought giving that to him alone in the snow in the dark was the right choice? The weight of disappointment softened his voice but sharpened its impact. I blinked hard, willing myself not to cry. I didn't think I whispered. I'm sorry. I'm not asking for apologies, he said. I'm trying to understand why you didn't trust me. That broke something open in me, because I don't know how I burst out. I've never had someone I could trust with anything, not with secrets, not with safety, not with myself. His face softened, but he didn't reach for me. I want to be someone you can trust. I know, I whispered, and that's what terrifies me. A long moment passed. The car engine ticked quietly as it cooled. Snow tapped the windshield like faint fingertips. Then Adrian unbuckled his seatbelt. We should go inside, he said. He didn't take my hand. He didn't touch my back. He didn't walk ahead or behind. He simply walked beside me the same distance as always, but something about that space between us felt suddenly vast. The children ran to us the moment we stepped inside. Max threw himself at my legs with such force I had to steady myself against the wall. Sophie hovered just behind him, biting her lip. Liam stayed further back, his expression sharp and searching. Are you leaving? Sophie whispered. The question hit like a blow to the chest. No, I breathed, kneeling down so I was eye level with them. I'm not leaving. But you left a note, Liam said, voice flat but trembling underneath. Dad found it. I closed my eyes. Another mistake made from fear. I wasn't thinking clearly, I said. I was scared, and when people are scared, they do the wrong things. Liam studied me with an intensity far too old for his age. Are you scared now? He asked. I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Yes. He didn't move toward me, but he didn't step away either, and that was something. A small lifeline thrown across a widening gap. Adrian cleared his throat. Kids, he said softly, why don't you go upstairs for a bit? Max shook his head instantly. No, I want her. The words wrapped around my heart like a fragile ribbon. Adrian knelt beside him. You can have her, he said gently. She's not going anywhere, but I need to talk to her for a moment. Max hesitated, then slowly nodded and allowed Sophie to take his hand. The three children went upstairs together. Their footsteps were soft but heavy with worry. When they were gone, the house felt too big, too quiet. Adrian leaned against the back of the couch and looked at me, not with accusation, but with a deep, sad exhaustion. You mean a lot to them, he said. You mean a lot to me. My breath caught, but right now, he continued slowly. We're standing at a point where trust needs to either take root or break completely. My hands trembled. I don't want it to break. Neither do I, he said. But wanting isn't enough. We need honesty. We need communication. We need to be on the same side. I am, I whispered. I'm trying. He nodded. I know you are. Another long silence followed. Then he pushed away from the couch and walked a few steps toward the hallway. I need a little time, he said quietly. To think. To breathe. Panic flared hot and immediate in my chest. Are you asking me to leave? He stopped and looked back at me, startled. No, he said firmly. You're safe here. The kids would never forgive me if you weren't. My pulse eased, but only slightly. But tonight, he added gently, I need space to understand how to move forward without risking your safety or theirs. My heart cracked at the edges. Not shattered, but cracked. The kind of break that aches more because it still hopes. I nodded slowly. I understand. He gave a small, sad smile before turning down the hallway. His footsteps faded. The house swallowed the quiet. I stood alone in the center of the living room, hands clasped to keep them from shaking. That was when my phone buzzed, a notification. Unknown number. One word. Tonight. My skin went cold. My breath vanished. and I knew that whatever came next would either destroy everything we had begun to build or force me to fight harder than I ever had in my life. The message sat on my screen like a drop of ink spreading through water, staining everything around it. Tonight, no explanation, no threat spelled out, but the meaning was obvious. Mark was not finished. He never would be until he destroyed every corner of my life that did not include him. My first instinct was to run upstairs to Adrian, to knock on his door, to tell him everything, to let him hold the fear for me just for a moment. But we were standing on fragile ground, and the last thing I wanted was to seem like I was using danger to bind him to me. I also did not want to be a burden again. That word ran through my head like a chant. Burden, weight, trouble. The things my ex-husband had named me until I believed them. So instead of going upstairs, I sank onto the edge of the couch and stared at the message until the letters blurred. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of heaters pushing back the cold night. Upstairs, the children's footsteps moved softly across the wooden floors as they settled into their rooms. I rubbed my palms against my jeans, trying to stop my fingers from shaking. Tonight. It echoed inside me like a warning bell. I finally forced myself to get up to lock the front door, to check the windows. My body moved on instinct learned from years of survival. Then I went into the downstairs office to retrieve something I had avoided looking at for too long. My old phone. The one I had left behind, shattered screen and dead battery when I ran from Mark the first time. Adrian's tech team had recovered its contents weeks earlier to help verify my identity for work documents. The phone had become a silent witness in a drawer, but tonight I needed witnesses. I plugged it in. The screen flickered to life slowly, painfully. With trembling hands, I searched through the messages. Old proof, old bruises, old pleas. There was enough evidence to drown me in memories, but also enough to save me if I stopped running. For the first time since leaving him, I felt something unfamiliar rising in me. Anger. Not fear, not despair. Anger. The kind that sparks before courage is born. Before I could talk myself out of doing the right thing, I grabbed the phone and went upstairs. I knocked on Adrian's door. There was a pause. Then footsteps. The door opened. Adrian stood there, sleeves rolled up, hair slightly disheveled. His expression guarded, but not unkind. "Elena," he said quietly. I held up the phone. "I need to show you something." His eyes flickered to mine, studying the tremble in my jaw, the way I stood gripping the device like a lifeline. Then he stepped aside to let me in. His room was warm, lit by a single lamp on the nightstand. It smelled faintly of cedar and clean linen. He sat on the edge of the bed, and I sat across from him in a chair, leaving space between us, but not as much as before. "What happened?" he asked. "I got another message." I handed him the phone. He read the single word on the screen. His jaw tightened. "When?" "10 minutes ago." He took a slow breath, processing. "Elena, this changes everything. You should have come to me immediately. I was scared," I admitted, voice cracking. "I didn't want you to think I was using this to pull you back." His expression softened with something close to hurt. "You can come to me with anything." "Anything." The words lodged in my throat, warm and painfully gentle. I unlocked the old phone, scrolling through years of messages. "There's more," I said. One by one, I showed him the texts, the voicemails, the threats. His hands curled into fists, not at me, but at what he was reading and hearing. "You lived with this," he whispered. "For years." "I survived it," I said. "Barely." He looked up slowly, and something in his eyes shifted. Not pity, not shock. Something steadier, something fiercer. "We are going to end this," he said, not with fear, with truth. Before I could respond, he stood and crossed the room, pulling a leather folder from his desk drawer. "I contacted a digital forensics team earlier," he said. "I needed them to examine the video Mark sent. I told them to treat it as potential manipulation." "Why?" I whispered. "Why would you do that after what you saw?" Because he said softly, "Your eyes never lied to me." The words knocked the air from my lungs. He handed me a printed report. "It is a deepfake," he said, "partially. The footage of you was real, but the part where it looks like you're giving him money was digitally altered. The timestamps don't even match." My heart pounded. So I didn't ruin anything. You didn't ruin anything, he repeated firmly. You were being framed by a man who has controlled your life for too long. Tears filled my eyes before I could stop them. I looked away quickly, but Adrian reached out slow and careful, like approaching a wounded animal. He touched my chin lightly, guiding my gaze back to his. I never doubted your heart, he said. I doubted my ability to protect you. That was when the first tear fell. Then another, not from fear, from relief, from the unbearable weight lifting inch by inch from my chest. I covered my face with my hands and let myself cry in a way I hadn't since childhood. Not silent, not hidden, not ashamed. Adrian stepped closer, but did not take me into his arms. Instead, he knelt beside me, not touching, just present. The kind of presence that steadied rather than suffocated. When I could finally breathe again, he spoke softly. There is more. Mark was arrested 20 minutes ago. I gasped. What? He was spotted near the school, Adrian said. His car was circling the block. Security alerted the police. My stomach dropped. He was going after the kids. Yes, Adrian said. Which means the evidence we have now is not just about your past. It is about immediate danger. That changes the entire case. My pulse pounded in my ears. Something hot unfurled in my chest. Not anger this time, but something brighter. Determination. For the first time, I didn't feel hunted. I felt ready to fight. Adrian reached out again this time, placing his hand over mine. Warm, steady, real. The truth is with us now, he said, and we are going to bring it into the light. I nodded slowly. Then let's finish this. He rose to his feet and pulled out his phone. I am calling the attorney. Tomorrow we start this process officially. As he dialed, I stood and looked out the window into the night. Snow still fell softly, covering the world in white silence. But for the first time, the darkness did not feel endless. It felt like the moment before dawn. The courthouse smelled like old wood and colder memories, the kind that settle into marble floors and refuse to leave. I had never imagined I would walk into a courtroom with my head held high, yet there I was, standing at the end of a wide hallway, lined with reporters' cameras flashing like lightning. Adrian walked beside me, not touching, not guiding, but matching my steps as if he could sense every tremor in my breath. His attorney team flanked us confident and calm, and somewhere behind us I heard the soft footsteps of 3 children who insisted on being here even though no one asked them to. When the courtroom doors opened, the air felt heavier, thick with curiosity and judgment. Mark sat at the defendant's table in a tailored navy suit, clean-shaven, composed. For a moment, my lungs forgot how to work. He looked exactly like he used to look when the world admired him. A respectable husband, a responsible professional, the kind of man who would never raise his voice, let alone a fist. I felt myself shrinking inside, slipping back into old shadows. But then I felt 3 sets of eyes watching me from the benches, small and steady. Sophie, Max, and Liam sat with their nanny, their hands clasped tightly together. They were not afraid. They believed in me. So I straightened my spine and walked forward. The trial began with the judge reading the charges: harassment, extortion, stalking, coercion, aggravated assault based on prior injuries, manipulation of digital evidence, and trespassing with intent to harm. Each charge hit the air like a hammer. Each one was a piece of my life I had buried, now dug up and laid bare in front of strangers. The prosecution began by presenting the deepfake analysis. The expert pointed to timestamps, mismatched shadows, manipulated audio. Mark's attorney tried to argue that I fabricated the entire thing, that I sent him the edited video, that I was seeking attention and financial gain. The same old narrative, the same tired script. I felt my throat tighten, but Adrian leaned slightly toward me and whispered, "Truth holds, lies break." The prosecution then played the audio messages, the threatening texts, the video he had taken years earlier without my consent. The courtroom grew quiet. Some jurors looked down. One woman pressed a tissue to her eyes. But the moment that shifted everything came when the retired doctor walked to the stand. She was tiny in her 70s, her silver hair neatly tied back, her hands steady as she held the affidavit she had written. She spoke clearly. I treated Elena Moore for injuries consistent with domestic assault. I observed fear malnourishment and signs of prolonged psychological control. She was denied medical care during a miscarriage. She asked me for help. I helped her disappear because I feared she would not survive if she stayed. A murmur rippled across the courtroom. Mark's attorney objected twice, trying to undermine her credibility, but every attempt only made him look desperate. When it was time for me to testify, my legs felt made of glass, fragile, breakable. But as I took the oath and looked up at the stand, my gaze drifted to the benches again. The 3 children I had come to love looked back at me, their faces open, worried, hopeful. And behind them, Adrian stood with his hands clasped, his shoulders squared with quiet strength. I took a breath, then another. Then I began. I did not dramatize. I did not soften. I spoke the truth exactly as it happened, carefully, steadily, the way one might stitch together a torn cloth by hand. When I described the night he threw me into the wall and I lost the pregnancy, a tremor ran through my hands. When I described him locking me inside for days, taking my phone, accusing me of being worthless, a juror wiped her eyes again. When I described the long years I spent believing I did not deserve safety, I saw Adrian's jaw tense, his knuckles white where he held the bench behind the children. Mark's attorney tried to rattle me during cross-examination. He said my memory was unreliable. He said abused women often exaggerate. He asked why I never went to the police. I answered quietly, because when someone convinces you your life is worthless, you stop believing anyone else will care either. He scoffed. And yet you expect us to believe a billionaire just happened to save you. I met his gaze. No, I am not asking you to believe in coincidence. I am asking you to look at the evidence. I am asking you to see who created danger and who helped me walk away from it. The courtroom fell silent. The attorney stepped back, unable to push further without looking cruel. When the closing arguments finished, the judge dismissed the jury to deliberate. Minutes stretched like hours. Hours stretched like a lifetime. We waited in a small room just off the hall, the children sitting around me drawing crayon pictures on scrap paper the nanny had packed. Adrian sat across from me. He leaned forward and said softly, "No matter the verdict, you are not going back to that life." I nodded, but my heart pounded too hard to speak. Finally, a bailiff knocked and told us the jury had reached a decision. We filed into the courtroom again. My knees felt unsteady, but I kept walking. The jury forewoman stood holding a slip of paper. Her voice was clear. "We find the defendant guilty on all counts." For a moment, the world seemed to stop. No sound, no breath, no movement. Then everything returned at once. The judge continued speaking. Reporters scribbled notes. Mark's face shifted from polished composure to something furious, raw, and ugly, but none of it mattered. I exhaled long and trembling. The weight that had lived in my ribs for years finally cracked open and began to fall away. When I turned around, I did not expect what happened next. Liam, the most guarded of the children, walked straight up to me, chin lifted, eyes steady. He reached out and took my hand. "She is not scared," he told the cameras, reporters, and the world. "She is our family now." My breath caught. Adrian's eyes softened. The reporters froze for a moment, then their shutters clicked like a storm. I knelt and hugged Liam tightly. Then Sophie and Max rushed in, wrapping their little arms around my neck. Their warmth broke me and healed me at the same time. When I looked up at Adrian, he did not gesture for me to follow him. He said nothing. He simply gave me a look that said the choice had always been mine. And for the first time in years, I felt ready to choose. The year that followed did not unfold like a fairy tale. It unfolded like real life does, in quiet shifts and small changes, in mornings that felt lighter and nights that finally held rest instead of fear. Healing did not arrive all at once. It crept in slowly like sunlight moving across a room, warming what had long been cold. After the trial, the world buzzed for a while with headlines and interviews and speculation, but our home softened into something quieter, something truer. I stayed not because I needed shelter, and not because I owed anyone anything, but because the house began to feel like the only place where I was fully seen. The children were the first to make that truth known. Sophie left drawings on my pillow almost every night, pictures of gardens and families and skies filled with bright, impossible colors. Max followed me like a little shadow, tugging at my sleeve to show me every new masterpiece he made with glue and glitter. And Liam, the most cautious of the three, began stopping outside my room each night to say goodnight. Sometimes he stayed longer, asking questions he had never dared to ask anyone. "Do you think people change? Do you think love goes away when someone dies? Do you think you are staying for a while?" The first time he asked that last question, my voice caught. I told him sincerely that I was not leaving. Not unless he wanted me to. He did not answer right away. He simply nodded, then walked down the hall with a small, quiet smile. Adrian was different too. Not in the way he carried himself in the world, because he still bore the weight of fatherhood and leadership with the same steady dignity, but in the way he moved through the house, softer somehow, as if he no longer feared that everything he touched might fall apart. He still struggled with sleep sometimes, waking in the middle of the night and pacing down to the kitchen to sip tea in the dim light. But instead of pacing alone, he would tap lightly on my door, and I would join him. We would sit at the table, speaking in low voices about unremarkable things, the ordinary details of our days, letting our presence fill the spaces where old wounds used to live. One night, months after the verdict, he told me I used to worry the house was too empty for them. Then I worried it was too empty for me. And now I am not worried anymore. I did not answer. I just let my hand rest near his on the table, not touching, but close enough for warmth to bloom in the space between. Bit by bit, we built a life that did not resemble the ruins we came from. Spring arrived early that year. The children begged us to plant a garden, and we spent long weekends in the backyard pulling weeds, turning soil, placing each small seed into the earth as though tucking a secret safely away. Adrian knelt beside me one afternoon, sleeves rolled up dirt, smudged along his forearm, and said softly, "It feels like we're planting more than flowers." I knew what he meant. We were planting possibility. The day he asked me to marry him was not dramatic. There was no staged moment, no elaborate display. It happened on a Tuesday evening as the sun dipped into the trees, casting warm light across the backyard. I was rinsing dishes when he stepped outside, hands tucked in his pockets the way he did when he needed to steady himself. I followed him into the garden. The children were inside playing a board game and arguing over who cheated last. Adrian turned to me, his expression open in a way that made my breath catch. "I have spent the last years trying to hold everything together alone," he said, "and I thought that was strength. But it turns out strength is letting someone stand beside you." He paused, eyes searching mine. "I do not need perfection. I do not need saving. I need a partner, and I hope that partner is you." Before I could answer, the back door flew open and 3 barefoot children tumbled into the yard. Max shouted, "Say yes, Mama Elena!" Sophie covered her mouth and giggled. Liam crossed his arms and muttered, "It took him long enough." I laughed, truly laughed, a sound that felt like air after nearly drowning. I turned back to Adrian, my chest full and trembling, and whispered, "Yes." The wedding took place in the garden we had planted together. There were no lavish decorations, just string lights, wildflowers, simple white chairs, and the people who had walked with us through storms. The children each brought a gift. Liam offered a hand-woven bracelet of navy threads, saying, "This one will not break." Sophie gave me a necklace of paper flowers and beads for when you feel sad. Max handed me a glittering popsicle stick crown. "It is for real, moms," he said proudly. My eyes filled not with sorrow, but with something whole. When I walked down the garden path, the locket from my mother rested warm against my skin. I touched it once gently before taking Adrian's hands in mine. Our vows were simple. "I do not vow to forget my past," I said, "but I will not let it define me. Love did not save me. It reminded me I was already saving myself." His voice trembled when he answered, "You are my beginning and my every step forward." When the ceremony ended, there was no dramatic kiss or loud applause, just warmth, laughter, and the sound of children chasing fireflies in the grass. As night settled, Adrian wrapped his arms around me from behind, his voice low against my ear. "You know they do not call you Elena anymore." I smiled softly. "I know. They call you Nana," he said. You have become someone new. I rested my hand over his. I did not lose myself. I just had not met her yet. Under the soft glow of string lights with the garden blooming around us and the future unfolding in small, beautiful breaths, I understood the truth fully for the first time. I was never thrown out. I was thrown forward, into the life that was always meant to find me. Sometimes a story ends, but something inside you keeps turning the page. If you made it all the way here, if you stayed through every heartbreak, every setback, every quiet victory, maybe it is because a part of this journey reminded you of something buried in your own life. Maybe you know what it feels like to be pushed out of a place you once called home. Maybe you know the sound of a door closing behind you. Maybe you know the weight of carrying a pain no one saw or fighting a battle no one believed you were fighting. Or maybe, just maybe, you have been the person who held someone else together when they felt like falling apart. Whatever brought you here, whatever made you click this story, I want you to know something people do not hear enough. The fact that you are still here says something about your strength, not the loud kind, not the kind that breaks walls or shouts into storms. The quiet kind, the kind that sits with sorrow, the kind that rises again in the morning when the night felt endless, the kind that keeps trying even when the world has already written you off. So many of us grew up believing we had to hide our hurt, pretend we were fine, pretend we were unbreakable. But the truth is, this healing does not come from pretending. Healing begins in moments like this one when a story cracks something open inside you and whispers, what happened to you mattered. What you survived mattered. Who you are becoming matters even more. Maybe you saw yourself in the woman who was thrown away. Maybe you saw yourself in the man who still reached out even through his own grief. Maybe you saw yourself in the children learning to trust again. Or maybe you simply felt the truth. We often forget that life can shatter us, but it can also gather us back together in ways we never expected. If this story touched something in you, stay with us. Here we tell stories not to escape life, but to understand it. We tell stories for the people who have been hurt but who still get up, for the ones who loved and lost, for the ones who were told they were too much or not enough, for the ones rebuilding their lives piece by piece. And maybe for people like you who just needed a reminder tonight that you are not alone in what you feel. If you felt a spark, a soft ache, a sense of being seen, or even the smallest breath of hope, I invite you to subscribe. Not out of habit, not out of obligation, but because stories like this one deserve a place to live and you help keep them alive. Every like, every comment, every share tells the algorithm that human stories still matter, that healing still matters, that kindness deserves a louder voice in a world that often forgets it. And if you ever feel like life has pushed you out into the cold, come back here. There will always be a light on. There will always be a story waiting to remind you that broken does not mean finished and lost does not mean unloved. What happened to you was real. What you survived was heavy. But what is ahead of you can still be beautiful, still be yours, still be worth reaching for. So before you go, take this with you. You are not too late. You are not too damaged, and you are not done becoming who you were meant to be. Sometimes the worst thing that ever happened to you is what leads you home. If this story meant something to you, let us know. Subscribe, stay, and walk with us through the next one. Your story matters here.